Welcome back to Continental Club, the only place on YouTube to get your European football fix. No Doogie this week, but my Cubs and I are joined by Patrick Van Straten.
Hey.
Pat, back on your favourite show. How are you?
Yeah, my favourite show. My tip-top favourite show. It actually is. I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, I think this is a show where you actually learn stuff rather than Sunday Vibes where we just shout at each other, you know? But obviously a little bit more hair than usual, a little bit less knowledge. So let the viewers decide how good that trade is. Me for Doogie.
Wow, that is an interesting trade-off. McCubbin, I can't start without you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, not much to report on really, Henry. So let's move on.
I think this will be going live on a certain person's birthday. So if in the comments,
thanks for broadcasting that. But
big birthday.
Yeah, big birthday.
It's a big birthday.
I'm 30. Yeah, I'm 30.
Are you?
Now.
I said 30.
I will be 30.
Oh my goodness!
Don't pretend like you didn't know this. I've been telling you about
this
it.
This is barreling towards you. There's no point being smug when you're 28.
I'm not being smug about it.
Look,
it's landmark birthdays. Get in the comments. Give this man some love.
Yeah. I mean, now that my birthday is out there, I would like to formally request that I join Zach Jalab on famousbirthdays.com.
It's not all that.
You're on it as well, aren't you?
No, for years they had me on there as a year older than I am. I don't know if that's been corrected, but
like
also
South Korea style.
Yeah, I get sent stuff like that. Like I used to get sent that back in the day, and I'd also get sent links to like the website where they estimate your net worth.
Really?
It turns out I'm worth £5 million.
It's a slight
Pretty
caveat.
Spicy. Didn't know that.
In the first year that I worked for FD, I remember falling asleep in front of the TV, and it was on like Channel 5. And I woke up and it was like 2 a.m, and it was you on TV. And it was one of those where you were responding to a moment or like a film. And it was you and Joe.
We did that for a minute.
I thought I was in a nightmare. I was so confused.
You thought that I beamed directly into your consciousness. Like The Shining. You're like the little boy in The Shining. I was Scatman Crothers.
Yeah, no, that was remarkable stuff. Anyway, let's move on to some more star power because we're talking about transfers this week. Can you believe? We thought, obviously, the transfer window, as per, dominated by the Premier League and now Saudi Arabia coming in, but the rest of Europe is doing a lot of business. It's busy churning away, and there's some great deals that have been happening. We asked you to send in your favourite deals that perhaps people may have missed, and so many suggestions on Twitter, so thanks so much. We'll try and rattle through as many as possible. Apologies if we missed yours. And at the end, we'll maybe rank our 3 favourite transfers that have taken place so far, and I don't think there's anywhere else we can start quickly than the major European transfer, sort of outside of the Premier League, which is Jude Bellingham to Real Madrid. We've obviously discussed this a lot. 103 million initial euro fee could rise to 134. Bundesliga player of the season last year, 8 goals and 4 assists, 200 career appearances already for club and country, and he's only just turned 20. I mean, Pat, just quickly, because we've talked about Bellingham obviously a lot on this show. Where do you see him fitting in that midfield? Do you think that with Kroos and Modric extending their deals there, with Camavinga potentially moving into midfield, with Fran Garcia coming in at fullback potentially next season after he was bought from Rayo Vallecano, what I think is a really smart transfer. Where do you think that Bellingham's place is going to be in that midfield, and do you think he's going to get the minutes to push on and sort of be that guy next year, or do you think he'll be a bit further down the line?
I think he will get plenty of minutes next year. I mean, one of the things that's always made Ancelotti kind of well liked by the Real Madrid hierarchy is that he's pretty happy to take what he's given and construct something usable out of it. And obviously we saw last season that he was already using Camavinga at left back in order to kind of crowbar as much of his talent in there as possible. I would say that maybe the role we'll see him in this year might not be indicative of how he'll actually play going forward. I think we all expect him to kind of be that Modric guy who links midfield to attack. Certainly with each passing year, it feels like Bellingham has gone further and further forward, and now he's popping up in the box a lot and getting a lot of involvement in kind of the action before the shot, I suppose. But you know, Ancelotti knows he's going next summer, so I think that he will probably just try and make things work this year, as opposed to necessarily think about how is this midfield of Tchouaméni, Camavinga, Valverde and Bellingham all going to fit together over the next, decade. I expect that we'll see him spot some minutes at 6, at 8, and in that kind of almost 8 to 10 role. I think you'll get to see him lots of different kind of phases next season. So I don't really know what to expect of it, but one of the things that makes Bellingham such a valuable prospect is that he's good at every midfield role. Mm-hmm. So in a way, Real Madrid will want to use him in lots of midfield roles to show that they've got that value out of him.
Nice. McCubbin?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't really ask you a question. Nice.
Just said my name. Yeah, I agree with Pat, to be honest. I think, Bellingham's going to have all sorts of incarnations throughout his career. And like on that subject as well, Camavinga obviously playing left back last season, as you were saying. But similarly to Bellingham, throughout his kind of very young career, there's been a feeling that he will at some point play a more attacking role. Like, I know that was certainly the case at Rennes, where he was like, this kind of superstar 16-year-old number 6 originally, but very quickly showed just, how expansive his game could be. So I think, for Camavinga as well, it'll be interesting to see what happens this season, because like it would be amazing to see him play a more of a kind of attacking number 8 role, and see how they split the minutes with Modric and Kroos, and of course Valverde as well.
Nice. Yeah, really exciting to see that for Bellingham next year. Pat, if we move on to another midfielder, Manuel Ugarte, who PSG have picked up for 60 million euros. This comes in from CEO Karlstrom. I remember on Sunday Vibes you were saying you wanted to see a more physical presence in that PSG midfield. Is this the guy?
Potentially. Yeah, I mean, I think this is the right sort of profile for PSG, because we've been saying for a long time PSG have been driven by names and not necessarily by what their squad actually needs. And I think Ugarte, and maybe somebody will come on to later, do fit the bill. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because this is the sort of move that I think also heralds the return of kind of solid cash flow around Europe. Last year, the year before, it felt like all the money was still coming out of the Premier League, whereas now this summer we've seen Bayern spend a little bit. We've seen PSG spend quite a lot. So, I know he's 22 years old. He's just a classic DM, really, and he's played in a high possession team. So, from that point of view, he seems to be tailor-made to go straight into PSG. I mean, they've paid a lot of money for him. 60 million is nothing to be sneezed at. But actually, half of their midfield is now pretty old. Danilo Pereira, who's also seen centre-back minutes, is 30 now. Verratti's 29. Wijnaldum, who ended up getting a lot of minutes last year, he turned 32, right? Gay left. These are guys who've aged out at the team over the last year or so. So it sort of feels then like you're left with the prospects for the future are Fabian Ruiz, who is already 26, 27. Carlos Soler, who is pretty lightweight. Vitinha, who's pretty lightweight. So they do need somebody in there who I think can allow Verratti to get some freedom, because right now Verratti's putting up the most defensive actions in the midfield. And as much as that's always been a strength in his game, I want Verratti to have a freer role if I'm managing that side. So Ugarte, huge defensive numbers. The leading defensive numbers of Verratti at PSG last season, 4.2 tackles and interceptions a game. Ugarte's at 6.8.
Wow.
And his passing's not amazing, but it's completely fine. Decent number of final third passes, decent completion, decent long balls. And what's really interesting about him is he's pretty press resistant. Across his career over the last 3 years, he's at about 1.6, 1.7 completed dribbles a game and a high success rate, close to 70%. So he is somebody who can wriggle away from a little bit of pressure. So he's not, just a totally immobile destroyer at the base of midfield. He's got a little bit more to him than that. So I quite like this. I think that this means you can do lots of different things with your midfield. Whereas actually I think over the last few years, PSG's midfield has become quite predictable. Their front line, of course, is always predictable. And these are the things that hurt you when you get into the latter stages of the Champions League. Now, whether Ugarte has the quality to make the difference against the best sides is a question, but certainly he's going to give PSG a solid platform in the centre of the park and allow them to reconfigure to meet different challenges. And that's something we've seen Enrique in the past, Luis Enrique. I think this can only be a positive for him tactically this season.
Yeah, I think he's perfect for them. I mean, teams will be sitting off them mainly in Liga, and so if he can just break up play and get it to one of their creative players just to press on and just trust in that forward line. They brought in lots of interesting players this year. I mean, Kang-in Lee, he's just had an amazing season at Mallorca. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if Asensio can kind of relight his career at PSG. So they've got options running across that forward line, and then obviously we need to see what happens with Mbappe. I don't know if you saw Nasser Al-Khelaifi's speech to them all this week, where he basically opened the brand new training centre. They're saying it's the best in the world. He said, this is it. You've got no more excuses. You have to deliver this year. You're playing for the most prestigious club in the best training facility possible. He did the speech in a mixture of French and English. And at the end of it, he said, after this, I will only ever speak to you in French. You have to learn French. That's the bottom line. You must respect the club. You must respect the culture. You must respect the fans. I know they've been booing you, but even so, they're the ones who pay you. You go and talk to them afterwards. I thought it was really kind of either a man at the end of his tether or sort of a sort of breaking point for PSG. So yeah, interesting to see how that goes. But I agree, Ugarte, what a great signing. Kim Min-jae to Bayern Munich, quickly. I think the fact they sold Lucas Hernandez for 45 million euros and spent 5 million extra on Kim Min-jae is amazing. I think that's so good.
How much did they spend on Lucas Hernandez originally, though? Wasn't it like 80, 90 million euros?
It's about 80. It's about 80, I think. I appreciate, yes, but even so, considering
his injury problems,
what he could have gone for eventually, I think to have got that much money for him from PSG is remarkable. And Kim Min-jae, 26 years old, the monster, as they call him, for Napoli, they were Serie A Defender of the Year last year. I think it's going to be really exciting, him next to De Ligt. De Ligt is actually a lot more classy than I think people think. He's a bit more of a bullish defender than he is. His passing numbers are pretty strong and he gives everything. And I think you see that from Kim too. I mean, his sort of clearance and aerial numbers are absolutely massive, but it's also his ability to play out with the ball, and his passes into the final third last year for for Napoli were absolutely huge. I mean, he's a massive loss for that Napoli defence, and I think they've got a bit of a snip here. Him alongside De Ligt is adding kind of the strength at the back, which they were looking for. They were frustrated with last year. I think Konrad Laimer, it'll be interesting to see how well he operates in front of them, if he'll get the minutes that perhaps he's been used to at Leipzig. But I'm really excited with the Kim Min-jae transfer. But I'm more excited with the announcement that they've got the Red Bull Salzburg director, Christoph Freund, through the door. I mean, Freund is 17 years at Salzburg now. He is responsible for finding and nurturing so much talent, and essentially Bayern have gone and got rid of the middleman between Salzburg, because if you look at their squad, so many of the players have passed through that system at this point in time. He'll have worked with so many of the players at this point too, so it seems really smart. Obviously they ran out of steam with Oliver Kahn and Hassan Salihamidzic, and I think Christoph Freund, he was heavily linked with Chelsea when they were looking for a sporting director, but he decided to stay in Austria, and now you can understand that it's probably a lot easier to make the transition to Bayern Munich.
And it's a bit of a breath of fresh air, isn't it, for Bayern as well, because they have such a history of just hiring former players and kind of keeping it in the family in that sense. Actually going for someone like Freund, feels like the club is potentially kind of accepting that they need to maybe go in a bit of a new direction. I think maybe that the end of last season was a bit of a shock, wasn't it? And clearly, they've invested in the defence where they needed to. Also like going for someone like Kyle Walker as well, another player who I know age profile not amazing, but someone who will definitely make them less susceptible to the break. And then getting in the sporting director like Christoph Freund is really interesting. Yeah,
absolutely. McCubbin, where do you want to take this next? We've got absolutely loads of suggestions.
Got tons here. I picked out a few from people earlier. I think let's go for a midfielder, or have we done too many midfielders already? Now let's go for another midfielder. Enzo Le Fée to Rennes, I think, is a sensational signing. This came in from Wisniewski98. So if I'm mispronouncing your name there. The font is quite small on this piece of paper. That's my fault. Enzo Le Fée, I mean, we raved about him a lot last season, didn't we? It was a shame that he didn't make the Liga and Team of the Year. I think it was Verratti and Seko Fofana who made it in the end. Or was it Verratti? Either way, Enzo Le Fée didn't make it in. I think he definitely did deserve it. He was just sensational last year. 5 goals, 5 assists from central midfield. At points he was playing in a double pivot as well. Quite a lot of minutes spent at the base of midfield for that matter. He's just a bit of a... I don't know. I can't really think of another player quite like him in European football in terms of like his productivity, but also his. I mean, he's not like a huge tackler, but he can. He performs well at the base of midfield, and he just is everywhere on the pitch with the ball. He can pick it up deep, or he can be the guy who kind of receives it further forward. He's a bit of a conduit, but he's also a great dribbler. And what's interesting when you look at his heat map is that he spends a lot of time on both wings, And so his delivery into the box is great. His creativity in general is really good. He's great at set pieces as well. I think he took pretty much all of Lorient's set pieces last year. And at points, there was a point before the World Cup where they were second in the league. They only got promoted back to Liga in 2020. 20 million euros, 5-year contract for him. I think it's a bit of a steal, to be honest, for a Rennes side which have consistently been really good at hiring some of the most promising young attacking players in France. Look at their attack now. They've got obviously Désiré Doué, who is homegrown, and then Bourigeaud, Doku, Guiri, Kalimwendo, Terrier, and they've also brought in Ludovic Blas from Nantes, who put up 12 goals and 8 assists in all competitions last season for Nantes. So, Bruno Genesio just has so many options at his disposal now, and Blas, obviously it'll be interesting to see where they all play, because there is a danger that Blas and Le Fée and Bourigeaud might kind of get in each other's way a little bit. Guiri as well, likes to drop deep at points as well to pick up possession. So they've got a lot of players who are kind of all-round attackers. Le Fée, I imagine, will probably play a bit deeper than them anyway, but he can operate as a number 10, and in some ways his kind of build is suited to that, because he's pretty diminutive kind of figure physically. So it'll be interesting to see how they do. But I mean, on paper, that attack is, maybe the second best in France after PSG. Like it's really, really exciting, and you have to. You kind of have to back them to at least put up a really good challenge to get back into the Champions League next year. Yeah,
absolutely. I think certainly the way that Lens have been gutted of some of their best players. Marseille, if they get Aubameyang, I think that could be a really good signing through the door to strengthen their attack. They made some interesting midfield additions too, Kondogbia, etc. So I agree with you. I think Rennes could look at that league and see a moment to strike, certainly into the Champions League positions. They're in the Europa League as well, and it's pleasing to see Le Fée at least play European football next year. If he'd just gone to Bournemouth, I think it would have been.
I mean, Lorient have done great though, haven't they? I mean, in terms of the fee they received from Bournemouth for Ouattara, and now this for Le Fée. I mean, Le Fée, could have gone for more. And I'm not sure whether Lorient managed to get any sell-on clause in his contract. But considering they were, still a Ligue 2 side just 3 years ago, to have got to have produced these kind of talents is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Pat, where do you want to go to next?
I want to talk about Christian Pulisic.
Yes.
And this comes from Sela Thinks. I don't know where the break is in that name. But 20 mil.
Yeah, I think it's unbelievable.
For Christian Pulisic, a third of what Chelsea paid. And I mean, look, I can understand why at this stage people say, how good is he? I mean, what was it? Down to 800 minutes last season, 2 goal involvements, pretty miserable stuff. But when he arrived, he was phenomenal. People forget how good he was when he came in the Premier League. He matched his expected goals that he put up at Dortmund. He was like a 0.7 expected goal a game guy then. And I think he got 13 goal involvements in pretty limited minutes that first year, and then just saw fewer and fewer minutes each passing season. And part of that was injuries, but part of it was just competition, or managers never quite getting along with him, or system changing, where maybe a 3-4-3, for example, didn't really suit him. But during that time, I mean, he's continued to put up outstanding numbers at the international level. He's I think he's got something like 20 goal involvements in his last 34 caps or something. So clearly the talent is still there. And I think for Milan, this is pretty much perfect. I think this is a player with a much higher ceiling than Brahim Diaz, as good a servant as Brahim Diaz was for them. Christian Pulisic in the past has got loads of touches in the box, a decent number of shots, good creativity, tons of dribbles. And I think that if he's playing regularly and Leao's on the opposite flank, I think it will benefit them both. Because defences last year kind of knew with Milan that if you stop Leao, there's not an awful lot they can do. Just having a reasonable threat on the opposite flank, I think completely changes the calculus for how they're going to play. And I just want to see him go to a place where he's going to be loved and where he's going to play consistently. And I thought that would probably end up being a step below where he's ended up. As it turns out, he's going to a team that made the Champions League semi-final last year, that won the title the year before that, that is one of the great historic clubs in Europe. And it's interesting, given the way that I think particularly American players have been received in the UK over the last few years, that Italy, which has generally speaking been a relatively conservative football nation, is now bringing in Pulisic for relatively big money for the league, bringing in Timothy Weah for big money for the league. You know, it feels like there is a kind of changing attitude there, which is positive. And I think will only mean that some of the regions of the world where talent goes a little bit undervalued might start to see their prospects change.
I think the work that Milan have done in the 15 to 25 million euro price bracket this summer so far is remarkable. We talked about it. We touched on it on Monday Vibes a little bit. I think Loftus-Cheek through the door, Reinders coming in from RZ Alkmaar as well. I think these are really interesting signings. And then if you get Chukwueze on the right wing, which they're working for, then it kind of complements what you were saying there. They'll have an entire forward line of players that can really cause some damage.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And then maybe, because there is talk, isn't there, that Pulisic could become the number 10 if that were to happen, if Chukwueze was to come in. I saw something as well about Danjuma as well. I'm not sure how much there is in that, whether they'd actually be able to get Danjuma and Chukwueze from Villarreal. But I mean, if you had Danjuma then as the number 9, that would be pretty tasty.
Yeah, well, Balogun's on their shortlist as well. You know? And I mean that does feel like it would be a stretch. But Milan have obviously brought in such a huge amount of money from Tonali that it feels like with these other kind of bargain signings, they would have the money to push the boat out in one particular zone. And if you were going to do it anyway, you do it at striker, right?
Absolutely.
You know, like Giroud is aging now. Ibrahimovic went from being a really good contributor in their title-winning season to a non-entity last year. That's where they need to spend money. And if they don't do it now, they'll have to do it next year. And I don't necessarily know if there'll be a better prospect for the way they've recruited recently than Balogun. It feels like he exactly fits what they've been trying to do. So I don't know. I mean, Milan have quietly become a fascinating side, and it's really interesting that despite losing Massara and Maldini, or not losing them but canning them, the strategy seems completely unaltered. Yeah, you know, they know exactly the way that they're recruiting now. That is such a good sign, I think, for a club's future.
And I feel like that's maybe why one of the reasons why Redbird Capital went for Milan was because they saw what they were doing and they were like, this kind of fits our ideals. You know, another player who was actually, you know, suggested to us, Van den Boomen from Toulouse, who's gone to Ajax. Toulouse also owned by Redbird Capital. In some ways, I was maybe a bit surprised that Milan didn't make a play for Van den Boomen. Maybe they did and he just preferred Ajax. But yeah, I do feel like that kind of the kind of recruitment that Milan have been doing in recent years made them a more attractive option for kind of new owners who have a track record of doing that as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. All right, gonna go to Spain now. Cool. For Jonathan Bamba. And you wrote this in because I obviously suggested this as a Crystal Palace free agent signing.
You love this guy.
I'm shocked to see that he's gone to Celta Vigo.
It's quite a step down, I think.
It is. It's a bit like when Carvalho and the Fekir were talked about for ages and then just went to Real Betis, who, no disrespect, it was just kind of expected a bit more.
Betis are a bit outside the box, though.
They are. They're a fun side, and I'm really happy to see that they've brought back Bayern, which is another one of the transfer that you guys suggested. But yeah, Jonathan Bamba to Celta Vigo at Naveen_Kumar11. This is the Rafa Benitez effect, okay? This is, Rafa's coming as manager and he's got a big name through the door. They've also signed Carl Perez on a free for about 5 million euros permanently from Roma, who I think is he's a pretty solid, if uninspiring addition. But Bamba, he's got a bit of flair to him. He's got 52 goal involvements in the last 3 years at Lille, which is fine. Like when he's fine, he's had some great seasons there, and he's had a few low seasons.
That's the thing. I feel like his goal output like dries up and then comes back kind of on a season-by-season basis.
But then you could just say that about Lille in general. Like Lille is such a cyclical club, of which it goes up and down so quickly because it gets raided. Obviously, the strategy
definitely helped last year, didn't he?
Absolutely. And they've made some fun signings too this summer. But yeah, he's still got 13 goal involvements last year. 27-year-old, so coming into your best years going, you would expect him to go to someone bit higher than Celta, who I think finished 13th last year.
Yeah,
12th, 13th,
stayed up on the final day, right? Or
yeah, I mean,
final day.
limped along for a while now, but I'm probably going to lose their best player in Gabri Veiga. But yeah, Bamba's decided to go there, and I think that's really good because if you look at the left side of their attack last year, Luca Della Torre and Franco Cervi, they failed to get a single goal and got six assists between them. Bamba can slot in on that left flank, and he just upgrades the whole sort of forward line in many ways. I mean, they need a bit of star power. Iago Aspas is not getting any younger whatsoever. He's still sort of going at 36 years old. I think still got about 13 goals last year, but you can't rely on that, especially if he's going to be turning 37 next year. So yeah, I think Bamba is a great free signing to Celta, and maybe that's his level. Maybe that's what we've discovered. But just quickly stay on Celta Vigo because they've lost Javi Galan, and I think this is a wicked...
I love that guy.
This is a wicked signing at the Atleti zone. He's been badgering me to talk about him for ages.
I suggested this guy for Barcelona like 2 years ago. Do you remember after that season where he had like the best dribble numbers in the league or something weird? Like there was loads of weird going on with Javi Galan, and now he's gone to Atleti?
Yeah. So
cool.
2021 for Huesca, who came 18th.
That was the one.
He ranked second in La Liga for crosses, take-ons, tackles won, and even fouls drawn. And I think he was the biggest throw-in monster in Europe that year. And he's basically done exactly that for Celta over the last 2 seasons.
What constitutes a throw-in monster?
According to FBref, he took the most throw-ins in Europe.
Oh, just the amount of throw you take.
Okay, so there's no like.
It's the most useless stat going. It's just all it tells you is that
how often the ball went out on that side.
He had the ball loads and he was running down there. He was getting tackled. He was picking it up and then they got it back to him and he threw it again.
Maybe that was part of his tactics.
Yeah, and even last year, huge throw-in numbers again for Celta Vigo. But he's added blocks to his game. But yeah, I mean, just listen to this: the third best ball-carrying left back in Europe, 8 for crosses into the penalty area in Europe, full stop. 5th for tackles won, and then like 4th for blocks in Spain, 7th for fouls drawn, and 3. He only got 3 assists, but in that Celta side where basically they only had 2 attacking outlets, it's going to be difficult. And a lot of sort of Gabri Vega's goals came in the second half of the season, anyway. So yeah, I mean, you're right. We've been talking about this guy for ages, Javi Galan. And 28 years old, he's finally got a move to sort of a big side there. And I think this is going to be great because they've had Yannick Carrasco basically filling in at left wing back, and then Reinildo, who can play left back also. He's been playing in sort of a back three, hasn't he? This gives Carrasco a chance to move further forward, where he is impressive. You look at his numbers.
Yeah.
They're huge. I mean, 7 goals and 3 assists last season was his lowest return for Atleti since 17-18. I know he had a few years at China in between there. But yeah, to pick up for Galan for €5 million when he's actually valued at 12 million on transfer marks, when it means that you can move one of your most experienced and attacking players further forwards, and he's just such a naturally proven left back in La Liga in his best years. I think this is a bit like the Trippier signing in many ways for them. I think it just makes sense, and it could be. I think he could be brilliant next season.
Yeah, I think he fits them really well actually, and they have they've not always recruited fullbacks that well.
No.
Look at like someone like Renan Lodi, who looked great for a while and then didn't work out in the end. Molina as well. I think got better towards the end of last season, but still yet to fully convince. Whereas Galan, I think he'll do a lot of the things that Carrasco was doing as a wing back in terms of his ball carrying numbers. Like Carrasco was doing tons of ball carrying for Atleti, especially in their title winning year. So yeah, it feels like a kind of stylistic fit as well. Although his attacking numbers aren't that amazing. His actual attacking output, whereas in terms of goals and assists, which could actually improve a lot in a more expansive side as Atleti are becoming. But yeah, I think just purely on the basis of ball carrying, like that's going to be so important for a side which is only just kind of coming out of the dark in terms of like not being able to progress the ball very well, which in that 21-22 season was just a huge Achilles heel for them.
I guess his attacking sort of success next year will rest on who they actually have at centre forward next year. Lots of talk that Morata might be going back to Italy for yet another move. So yeah, I love this signing. Pat, we've got a few more still down here. Where would you like to go next year? Orkun Kokcu, we've got him down here.
No, I'm all right.
No, you don't want to talk about him?
No, I'm going to talk about Javi Simons, who this comes from at Caps Lock. And we've now had it. He's going back to PSG, but then he seems to be immediately leaving again to go to RB Leipzig. Obviously, we've been talking about this guy all year because we knew about this buyback, and it's €6 million, I think. It's an unbelievable bargain. I'm not sure I fully understand why they're bringing him back just to loan him straight out. I mean, I guess their thought is this will give us a real understanding of if he's at our level, and then next year either we integrate him or we sell him. But just keep him in the squad.
Do you not think that they had the opportunity to buy him for such a small fee? They've got to execute that. And his reasoning is, well, if I come back, I want to be playing regular football. Leipzig have come in and said, we'll take him. That's obviously a Champions League club, kind of the level which he'd want to be at. Do you not think for PSG it's like, sure, we'll pay the fee now, give you what you want for a year, and then you'll be part of the project?
Yeah. I mean, like, they're not going to lose anything by doing it. It's just that I think you could just integrate him into the squad. Like, I think you could just give him the minutes. There are plenty of minutes we saw last season for youngsters in the team, and he is an academy boy to some extent. But I don't know. I know they've signed Asensio, but I'd rather give him minutes than Asensio. I'd prefer to do that.
Yeah,
I just think that that's a better investment. So, yeah, I mean, they're not going to lose anything this way. But 27 goal involvements in 34 appearances in the Eredivisie last year.
That's nuts.
Crazy ball carrying numbers, crazy dribbling numbers, great defensive work rate, which I think is exactly what that PSG front line needs with Mbappe there. And it's been and still Neymar there. And I think, look, it is in the Eredivisie, but this kid's 20 and he's got all the indications in the numbers that he could be a guy you can run your attack through later on. I don't know. I just think when there's somebody like this, if I were a PSG fan, I'd think, let's have a look at him. Like, let's at least watch this kid play. Now, I mean,
it's not like that season came out of nowhere as well. He's been like one of the most highly rated teenagers in world football for a number of years. So it's not like it's no fluke that he had that kind of season, is it?
No, it doesn't seem to be. No, but I mean, look, him going to Leipzig, great. As you say, you'll get to watch him in European football. He'll be working under a very good manager who's got a great track record of developing youngsters. It's part of this Leipzig plan of, rather than getting positionally static guys, we're going to get people who can play a bunch of attacking roles. Simons and Luis Openda, who we might talk about, as replacements for Nkunku and Szoboszlai. That feels incredibly natural. You've got guys who are producing huge numbers of shots, who are pretty creative, who are faster than you'd expect, who work harder than you'd expect. It all makes sense.
Do you think Fabio Carvalho will hold up amongst those?
I think Fabio Carvalho could have a really interesting time there if he can stay fit. He's an interesting sort of player. I still don't quite know what to make of him because I still think he's the kind of guy that people don't know what he does. So they're like, yeah, maybe he's a winger or an attacking midfielder. But really, he does play like that slightly more reserved role, right? He's a guy who's involved in progressing the ball into the final third rather than necessarily kind of getting shots off in the box. So I think that maybe a fluid attack at Leipzig is quite a good fit for him.
Yeah, I agree.
But they're going to be worth watching next season. They're kind of like Rennes as well. Like if you want to see the future of attacking football in Europe next year, then maybe you want to watch Leipzig.
I was saying on Monday Vibes, I think they're going for a title. I think they're genuinely going to go for it. They've got so many attacking options now. And yeah, Luis Openda, as you said, 43 million euros.
That's crazy. That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, but I think it could, if he's good, then he's worth 70 million euros because that's just what Leipzig can do at this point. That's the price point they're commanding.
Sure.
And he's scored 2 years in a row at Vitesse, tons of goals for Vitesse. Yeah. Went to Lens and obviously banged 21 goals last season in Liga. And I mean, he's banging form. He's 23 years old. Basically, the future of the attack for the Belgian side as well. I think this is a really great transfer. And as you said, I looked at his heat map, and he plays everywhere. He's not like just in the box. He's picking the ball up from all over the park.
Yeah.
For Lens last season. Maybe
he's a little guy, actually.
Yeah, he is.
He's not tiny, but I mean, like he's a guy who wants to drift around, and he's hard to get hold of. He's not like a static centre forward.
Yeah. No.
So I guess that's why it would make sense, because the fee is kind of comparable to what it seems like Arsenal want for Balogun, and so there was a lot of kind of questions online of who's better of these two players. But Openda stylistically makes way more sense than Balogun for Leipzig, right?
He's got more experience under his belt at this point in time than Balogun. I think if you're Leipzig, you've got to go for a bit more experience from time to time. I don't think you can constantly just take a chance on players you hope will become what you're expecting them to. So yeah, Šeško as well coming into that forward line too.
Oh yeah,
it's really quite exciting, and his shot conversion rate's about 20%. If he can get that up a bit, like.
He's not. What do you mean if he can get that up a bit? That's insanely high.
Well, imagine how good he could be if he goes a bit higher.
Yeah, imagine if he scores 80% of his shots. Imagine how good he'd be. He would be the greatest ever.
All right, you made me look silly, Pat. That's fine.
20% shot conversion is really, really high.
So it's 1 in 5.
That's
pretty.
Exactly
pretty
what I was going to say. Actually, exactly what I was going to say. Very good. Right. We've got a few more just to get through. McCoven, you've got Kokcu.
Yeah, I'll go Kokcu, why not?
Yeah, go on then.
Yeah, I feel like I've spoken about him a lot, actually, Kokcu. So maybe this will be the last time I speak about him before the season starts. But I think, 25 million euros to Benfica from Feyenoord. Obviously, captain Feyenoord to that title last year at 22 years of age. Super, super impressive. I think there could be 5 million in add-ons as well for him from Benfica, but essentially, yeah, they've paid 30. They will have paid 30 million euros for an Enzo Fernandez replacement.
Yep.
And Kokcu isn't exactly like Enzo, but I think in a Benfica team that dominates the ball, at points, especially in the first half of last season, looked like one of the best club sides in Europe. I think he will have no problem at all settling in, and he's not going to maybe get as many opportunities to kind of run games like he did at Feyenoord, but equally, I think we could see his goal output potentially increase. He got 8 goals and 2 assists last year. His goal and assist, his kind of expected goal and assist numbers were slightly up on Enzo. I think he was getting 0.42 expected goals and assists per game last season. Enzo was a bit under 0.4 before he went to Chelsea. And he's got a great long shot on him as well. I think that's kind of one of his kind of specialists things. But I think the main thing about Kokcu is that he's completely two-footed. And so a little bit like Le Fée, who's like super, super press resistant and can kind of play a number of roles. Kokcu as well is, one of these guys who can play and has played a lot at kind of defensive midfield in a double pivot. But is able to aid the attack effortlessly. I think he was I think he made more final third entries than any other player in Europe's top 7 leagues last year.
Wow.
Which is pretty mad for a guy his age. But he also can be, but he's also a big passer as well. So in terms of ball carrying and passing, he's just one of the best in his position. And I think he also had more touches in the attacking third than anyone else at Feyenoord last year, and that was per 90 as well. So more touches in the attacking third than even, the wingers or the strikers at the club. Despite, starting, despite starting a lot of those moves, in his own half or on the halfway line. So in terms of an expansive young midfielder, there aren't very many who are as exciting as him in Europe, I don't think, right now. He's also producing internationally as well. I think he's got 1 goal and 2 assists for Turkey in Euro qualifying. Came through the Groningen Academy, which has produced some of the best talent out of the Netherlands over the last 20 years. I think it's a super, super smart signing from Benfica, and someone who I think, within a year may be worth at least double what they've paid for him. It's just classic Benfica, really.
Very smart Benfica sort of getting there ahead of the curve on this one, get him in. And I like, they've got Di Maria as well through the door next season, who was all right. He was pretty good for Juventus last year. Just what a guy for some of the younger players to learn through. And you're right, maybe he just sees that pathway from Benfica to a bigger side. They've shown that they're willing to sell, and they've shown that you can gain value there.
They're a really fun team as well, aren't they?
They are
got
fun.
Florentino Luis alongside him. He'll just do all the mopping up. We'll let him kind of, we'll let him kind of play with freedom. They're a really exciting team to join.
Absolutely. All right, last one quickly. Marcus Thuram to Inter. I think this has gained more relevance now that the news has come out that they're not going to be signing Romelu Lukaku after all. I think it's for a free transfer. Funny. 100k a week. Do you like it? There's an amazing picture in
No, the Lukaku thing is funny.
Oh yeah, we'll get onto that at the end of the show. There was a great picture in the front of La Gazzetta dello Sport this week. I don't know if you saw it. It was George Weah and Marcus Thuram. No, sorry, Lilian Thuram in their Juventus and AC Milan shirts with Timothy Weah and Marcus Thuram in front of him. It was quite nice.
It was really cute.
It was a great photo, actually. Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be wicked. He was first in the Bundesliga last year for non-penalty XG, which is great. Great news, really. So he's just a clinical striker. Got 12 goals in a pretty miserable side. 13 goals and 6 assists in a pretty miserable Mönchengladbach team. 3.3 shots per 90. That's in the top 15 percentile of attackers in Europe. I just think for a free transfer, considering Inter are trying to like cut costs this year, it looks like they're going to go for like a cheap alternative at in goal to replace Onana. Obviously they're in for Balogun at the moment. Sky Sports saying they've bid about 34 million euros this year. I think to get anywhere near the 34 million pounds. I think to get anywhere near the 50 million that Arsenal want, they need some kind of sell-on clause or something like that at the moment. But if they can get him through the door too, that's great. But so far, I think Thuram and Lautaro Martinez has the foundations of a really fun strike partnership next year. And I do think actually now the dust is settled with the Lukaku drama, this actually makes sense to not bring in two fairly similar kind of profiling players. Although, you know, Thuram can play out the wide as well. He's pretty versatile in that regards. And just quickly, thanks to Nalo Connor on Twitter for pointing out that Gladbach have actually signed Tomasz Sivansara from Sparta Praha. That's 12 goals in 26 games last season. Frank Honorat has 2 coming through the door. At least they're making moves to replace some of their players. Do you know what I mean? I think we were pretty down on Mönchengladbach. At least they're getting some fun guys through the door. And you never know who could explode, certainly going into the Bundesliga. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Other suggestions, we had Mitchell Bakker to Atalanta, Dali Blind has gone to Girona, Brendan Aronson to Union Berlin, and Ricardo Pepi got I know you used to have an opinion on Ricardo Pepi. I think
he's crap.
Okay, well,
he's terrible.
Got 12 goals for Groningen last year.
Yeah, he's terrible though.
Okay, so you're not a fan of that one?
His underlying numbers are absolutely garbage in the Eredivisie. I mean, and he was a guy who went to the Bundesliga. He went to Augsburg, right? For big money. It was like 20 million euros coming out of MLS. And at the time, MLS watchers were like, really? Ricardo Pepi? Okay. And it turned out to be a bad move. And I think this will turn out to be a bad move.
You don't like the 12 goals for Groningen last year?
I don't.
Fair enough. Well, him and Noah Lang could be an interesting part of that PSV attack. McCubbin, what's your top three transfers?
Top 3. Let's see. I think Enzo Le Fée is definitely up there. Maybe. I really like Ugarte as well. I'm gonna say number 3. I'm gonna say number 3, Lois Openda to RB Leipzig. I think he will score lots of goals in the Bundesliga next year. Number 2, Ugarte, and I'll say number 1. Le Fée.
Pat, what about you? I forgot to mention Evan Ndika to Roma, which actually I think is a great transfer. He's one of
those.
Yeah, they're both great transfers. We've talked about them a lot though in previous shows. So sorry, McCubbin, Pat. Sorry, who's your top 3?
3 Pulisic, 2 Simons, 1 Le Fée. Le Fée's a guy who I think he's quite Santi Cazorla-y. You know, in the way he plays, and also in the fact that he's
tiny.
Maybe it feels like and it feels like he might get the move at 26 that he should have got at 23. But he's a guy who I look at him going to Rennes, and I just think you're getting a top class player who could go anywhere when really you shouldn't be able to, and you're not even paying a big fee to do it. Like it's just an amazing signing. I
agree. Yeah, I'm putting in number 3. I'm going for Javi Galan. I just love that signing. Number 2, I'm going to go for Le Fée, and I'm going to put Pulisic at number 1. I really think I think that he's going to be wicked for Milan next season. Let me know if you think that's crazy in the comments down below. Let us know if you think any of our suggestions, or if we've missed any transfers that perhaps we should have been talking about. Let us know down below. I'm sure we'll do some kind of roundup or part 2 in many ways towards the end of the season when all the transfers are in. We're going to move on to some quickfire questions. All right, for quickfire question, we're going to look at some quotes that have come out in the media this week. The first one, Pat, concerns Romelu Lukaku, and this is the Curva Nord, the ultras of Inter Milan, who have come out pretty ruthlessly against him. Those who betrayed you will do it again, not because they enjoy it, but because it falls within their nature. They said he stabbed them in the back in the way that Brutus did after they defended him. You kissed the badge that is worth more than our lives is to us, and now, like vile, cheap mercenary, you're selling yourself to the highest bidder. And then they called him not a man. I mean,
that was funny also.
We talked about this situation on Monday Vibes a little bit. What's your take on the Lukaku? Because, I mean, it's not nice to hear. It's quite dramatic in many ways.
Yeah, but that's just what Inter fans are like, though, isn't it? I'd say wearing an Inter shirt. Like, I think I think they said when he went to Chelsea, which like bagged into like 100 million euros or whatever it was, they said that he'd got on his knees for money, and they were like, "That's fine, you're just, that's just what the kind of guy you are. That's fine, but we're not so happy about it. We kind of stuck by you and everything. It is very over dramatic, I think.
Yeah, it's like he won them a title, and got them a load of money. Shut up.
What do you think that he's played his cards terribly in this situation?
I do think he kind of has, as in, he needs that Juve move to pan out.
Yeah,
he really does, because otherwise he's stuck on the Chelsea bench next year, right? Like those are the consequences if it doesn't happen. Like the fact that it's come out in the worst possible way, like this idea that his representatives were talking to Juve while Inter were preparing for the Champions League final. It does not look good at all. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like he'd start for Chelsea next year. Obviously, Inter have pulled out, and Juve, in order to sign him, need to sell Vlahovic, and the only teams who are apparently remotely interested in Vlahovic are PSG and maybe Chelsea. But Juve want like 70 million euros. I don't know. There are so many moving parts that it really would not surprise me if Lukaku, if we're getting to kind of mid-August and Lukaku is thinking, oh my God, like what is going to happen this coming year? I mean, I find Ultradom a bit embarrassing. I think it's a bit silly, like these guys who are like, we're super tough guys, but also all we do is kind of cry all day long about people who've like disrespected our football club. It's like, hun, like it's just like, it's like somebody like breaking your favorite Lego. Like, it's not important. It's only a football club. So I do find that a bit embarrassing, but it's not a great look. And I mean, Lukaku, when Lukaku left United, he was quite disrespected as a player. People would say he was a donkey or whatever, but nobody really mocked him that much as a guy. Whereas I feel like the last 5 years have been truly corrosive to his image as a human being. Like, he's getting rinsed left and right by everybody, and he is kind of quite an embarrassing figure. And you do just sort of think, if Lukaku had just done the simple, sensible thing at some point in the last few years, if he hadn't, wanted to have this fairy tale with Chelsea, or if he had just kind of just accepted that he was going to go to Inter or something, or waited till Inter couldn't pay and then tried to make a Juve move happen, he might just be thought of a little bit better. But I don't know. I think it's embarrassing for everyone involved, to be honest.
Yeah, I just think that Inter are pulling out all the stops to get him when it's quite obvious that they've got a limited budget, when they're really trying for him, and for him to reportedly not pick up his phone and sort of potentially push for some move. It is sad. And I think
it seems like someone who's been very badly advised as well, doesn't he? Like, I mean, surely someone in the kind of Lukaku entourage at some point. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's just the fact that it's happened multiple times over the last 2 years, like badly timed interviews, but all this kind of stuff. It's like, I don't know what his management have been doing.
There's no point. Like, I just don't understand why you'd burn a bridge unless either something unforgivable had been done, or actually, I don't even know. Like, it just still seems ridiculous. There's absolutely no need for him to create like this amount of acrimony with people that he might need to work with. I don't understand it at all. But yeah, it just feels like something somewhere along the way has been lost. Either he's getting bad advice, or he's just kind of behaving like a child in it. I don't really know who's to blame.
It does feel like maybe Saudi Arabia is on the cards. Apparently even the Juve fans aren't keen on him. Some of them have come out and said.
And there was like a kind of protest or whatever there was.
Yeah. Let's wait and see. Another player who's struggling to find a club next year, who's come out in the media, is João Felix, and this is quite surprising. He'd said, "I'd love to play for Barca. Barca has always been my first choice, and I'd love to join Barca. It was always a dream since I was a kid. If it happens, it will be a dream come true for me." Apparently Atleti did not know that he was going to say these things. He's just signed a contract extension until 2027. McCubbin, what do you make of Felix quotes? And if you were Barcelona, what are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, again, that seems pretty mad because Atleti hate Barca. It feels like completely inconsequential. Like, there's no way that João Felix is going to go to Barcelona. Like even a loan move, I don't see I mean, I know Barca have made some pretty wild decisions in the transfer market in recent years, but
especially when it comes to Atleti players.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And I feel like surely, having been, I mean, they obviously spent huge money on Griezmann from Atleti, but he was a proven La Liga, attacker who was, who was just a bad fit. João Felix, you just don't know if he's not been a good fit at Atleti or really anywhere that he's been since Benfica. It just seems it just seems completely inconsequential. Like, I mean, what like Barca, like, in theory, could do with like a centre forward to take over from Lewandowski in the long run. João Felix isn't a player in that mould. He's not really someone who excels in a proper winger position. So, like, even though Barca, there are question marks over the future of that left hand spot, with like Ansu Fati dropping off in the last kind of year or two, and a bit of uncertainty over his future in general. I don't think João Felix is the guy to fill in that spot. The midfield is completely sorted as long as Pedri stays fit. Like, in some ways, I feel like that would be where he would be most suited at Barca, would be in like almost a kind of like like a number 10 role almost.
Yeah.
That would in terms of like Xavi's system, that would feel the most natural to me. And that's an area where they're pretty sorted in. So I just can't see João Felix happening to Barcelona. But it does feel like this summer, and I think you're writing a 10 about it at the moment, right, Pat? There are like quite a few players on big wages who have big price tags on, who are bought for big money, who are now in this kind of limbo because their club doesn't particularly want them, and no one else particularly wants them because they can't afford them, and they're risky investments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I thought he looked pretty bright for Chelsea behind the striker, but you're right. At Atleti, that's kind of where Griezmann's taken up the role.
Yeah, and maybe Chelsea would have taken a chance on him if it was like for 30 million euros, but like, it wasn't. How much were they going to have to pay? Like near 100 million, near 90 million, or whatever it was. So it's just that's the problem that João Felix faces, and it's a shame because it's not his fault. Like, he didn't ask Atleti to pay that kind of money to Benfica for him back in 2019. And although there might have been certain things he could have had a bit more control over in terms of him and Simeone's relationship and generally kind of how things have gone at Atleti, he is still a really young professional, and I think he was thrust into that team, or thrust into a club like that, probably just a year or two too early.
Yeah, I just wonder who's told him to come out and make these statements, as if they're just saying, if you flirt with Laporta, if you tell Laporta that you like him, he might be interested in taking you on. It's not going to happen. I'm not sure his dream is going to come true. That's it for Continental Club for another week. Thank you so much for all your suggestions. As always, Pat, thank you very much for joining us. It's always great to have you on the show. Is there anything you're working on that you want to push to?
No.
Fair enough. Recovered?
Go and check out Team Talk from yesterday.
Oh, yes.
We were all on it, plus Doogie. I think we all at one point were grilling kind of. There were lots of moments where it was 3-on-1, which is always great.
Yeah.
I think I was up against it at one point. Doogie up against it at least once or twice, as he often is these days. But what were we talking about? Underrated, overrated players. We had a good debate on Enzo Fernandez.
Yeah, it's well worth checking
out. Good
out.
debate on who else was it? Oh yeah, your boy Leon Guy. What's his name? Brian Cherky.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So
great Cherky.
It was good fun.
Really good episode. Also, the Women's World Cup starts today that this comes out. We've gone and explained on it. Please go watch that. Cheer on the Lionesses. Really hoping they can do it down under. And I hope the FA give them the pay they deserve, quite frankly. All right. Thanks very much for watching Continental Club this week. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.